All right, we are here on Red Belt Podcast. So, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in martial arts and with your gym.
Yeah, started out age 13 in jiu-jitsu. Um, Grew up in Torrance, California, and in Torrance, California, back in the early 2000s, there was the Gracies and the Machados in Torrance. That's the city that they came to. So I was lucky enough to be raised in the same city. Started out with the stand-up arts, karate, hapkido, and all that, and started training striking and actually MMA before jiu-jitsu. My instructor at the time was named John Barrett, and he had a one jiu-jitsu class per week. And I started training jiu-jitsu and just fell in love with jiu-jitsu. Ended up searching out a strictly jiu-jitsu gym, and then that's when I went to the Rigan Machado Academy, um, and just started training with Rigan Machado.
How long did you train with Hegan? That's a legendary coach, by the way, for anybody listening.
Yeah, I trained with Rigan from when I was like 15 to like 21. Um, I went through blue belt to brown belt, um, flying that flag. And specifically, Keegan Machado was kind of phasing out of the coaching side, kind of in the first couple of years. So there was another coach named Kaiser who was the head coach, but Hegan's always came in the academy and showed me little tips. And and at that time in the academy, there was all the pictures of him and the brothers winning ADCC, giant posters, and all of his different accolades. So it was really, really cool to be a part of that team.
So, what's your affiliation now? Do you have an affiliation?
Yeah, so my affiliation is Hegan Machado affiliation. I was with Hegan again until I was a brown belt, and then I focused more on MMA. I took a big break as a brown belt, so that's why it took me so long or longer to get my black belt. Spent like 7 years, 8 years as a brown belt, and I was doing MMA, traveling around with a bunch of different teams. Still represented Machado's, but was also training with a lot of other teams specific to MMA. And then came back to Pacific Northwest, moved here in Washington, and I was under a guy named Fabiano Scherner, and I affiliated with him because he had a network of schools up here. And then I started the past year, I focused on my own brand and kind of being affiliated, started my own affiliation. Um, but we're under Rigan Machado still. I've always been under Rigan Machado. Like he's like a really, really good friend. He's like an uncle to me.
Awesome. So, just kind of niche topic that I've always kind of wondered about. So you hear this thing in jiu-jitsu with it that people say all the time that other than black belt, that blue belt's the longest belt. Like the people spend the longest time at blue. But I know tons of people that that's not true, that it's brown. Right. So I spent a lot longer at brown than any other of my like other than black. It was brown for me. I wasn't that long at blue. And you sound like you're also the case. How common is that? Is like that like a normal thing, especially on older lineages? Is that a thing, or is that just us?
It's a good question. How long did you spend as a brown belt?
Man, 6 or 7 years. Um, so I was blue to purple in two, which was about minimum time in rank at that time. But
Yeah.
brown was way longer.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
had injuries and whatever, but I was actively training, even with the injuries and stuff. I trained um, generally more than once a day, 6 days a week for 6 or 7 years. For to go from there, I know people that went from white to black in less time like than that.
Yeah.
So
100%. I mean, I got promoted to blue, I think in like 6 months. I got promoted to purple in a few years, and I got promoted to brown in a few years. But I was also training twice a day, So I early on I knew I wanted to be a competitive jiu-jitsu athlete, and then it just kind of branched into MMA. But it's all about the student where they're at. You get guys that are like just athletic freaks, that sometimes they can also retain the knowledge and they go up pretty fast in the beginning ranks. You get some guys that are just have that mind for jujitsu and they can go up in the beginning ranks. And then like, myself, now that I'm promoting black belts, like if you're a brown belt on the other scope, the brown belt side, um, I need to make damn sure that you're going to represent as a good black belt under me, So that's why it's sometimes will take longer for that. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah, I
mean,
don't.
under my so I went white to black under Eddie Bravo. And I've observed, yes, Eddie's promoted some people quicker, like Gio's famously like 3.5 years, something like that. But I've observed it's very common to spend a long time at Brown under Eddie. And I've heard about
Yeah,
it outside that. So I don't know if it's just particular coaches, but like it's very common. Yeah, and I think it's what you're saying. Like I have three brown belts under me right now that, you know, I'm kind of making wait a while because, like you said, like I want to make sure that you're ready. And it seems like, but you don't hear that. People don't say that in jiu-jitsu. They say, "Hey, it's blue belt." That's the long rank. Do you think people just say that for some other reason? Or
so now, yeah, now jujitsu is there's so many black belts. There's so many different guys on the internet that have these little clips on Instagram that you see, and then it kind of gets stuck in your head. But I think it all depends, but like someone like Eddie, Eddie's Machado lineage, he was very close to the Machados, and has so many stories about Eddie Bravo. I'm bringing him up next month, and I'll probably ask for more because they're always awesome stories. Like the origination of the Twister and how Eddie would used to tear it up with all the Team Machado back in the day with his unorthodox games and just all really cool stuff to hear. And that Eddie is such an innovator, but he also sticks to the traditional way. Because if you go to any of his schools, you don't just see Eddie Bravo on the wall. You see Hicks and Gracie. You see John Jock. You see Carlos, um, and then you see the professor in that academy, and then you see Eddie, and
yes.
and that's the true jujitsu way, even though it's mostly no gi, he's more traditional than a lot of the gi schools that I see come out. Um,
Yeah,
so
what's super interesting to me is some people don't they think this is weird when I say this, but like I know a lot of guys from like Hickson lineage and things like that. I really like training with those guys too. What's super odd is to me, they're much closer than like even though like Gracie Bajas, Carlos Gracie Jr. is only like a couple branches away, but there's so much spider guard and Gracie Baja, so much lasso and all of that. And the Hickson guys are more overhook, underhook, simpler. Like it's closer. People are like, oh, 10th planet, that's is that crazy stuff. Like, but it's so much closer to Hickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu than it is to the other side of modern sport jiu-jitsu, but people don't think of it that way. They would think it's the opposite. But to me, it's like Hickson used to train on the beach and stuff. He didn't have a lot. He does a cross collar, but I did several seminars with Hickson. He doesn't do any
mm,
craziness.
no, not at all. It's all strictly basics. And John Jock was really the one who innovated the overhook and the underhook with his hand, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of was the base of the 10th planet system, and also John Jock used the hooks, the meat hooks, and he used the omoplatas. He used the butterfly guard. Um,
One of the best butterfly players of his age, for
yeah,
sure.
for sure. And and John Jock, now we know John Jock and Hickson to be such close, you know, close, right? So John Jock's getting his kind of his stripes and his belts under Hickson, right? But they're all kind of the same. One thing we never really got to see was Hickson in a no-gi tournament. They guarded Hickson so much, back in the days, like with his MMA career, with his no-gi, like he was just, I feel like we didn't really get to see the beauty of Hickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu because most of that footage is back in Brazil. And it's, like the worst VHS back then, right? Because it was back in the day, right? Um, so that's something I always kind of wanted to see,
Didn't
but
do
I
Hickson
imagine it's, yeah.
did Hickson he did a big tournament against somebody, right? That was like controversial. Was it a ADCC or something? Or am I just imagining this? Hickson, didn't he have some big tournament against another big name? That there's this one.
So that was him versus Rigan Machado.
Yes. Was
That
that at
was him versus,
ADCC or where was it
no,
that?
that was in a Brazil, that was a tournament in Brazil, but it wasn't Nogi. No, Hickson never did ADCC. Henzo did ADCC. Hyan Gracie did ADCC. Rodrigo Gracie did ADCC. Um,
Yeah,
who else? A bunch of Gracies did, but Hickson never did because, again, he was trying to sign these $1 million contracts in Japan, and
sure.
hey, good for him, dude. He got
Oh
some
yeah.
really good opponents, and he got paid, and he
Oh yeah.
had a good time.
I mean, ADCC had the reputation of the big money in grappling for a long time. And that's because it was the only money in grappling basically for a long time. But like it's whatever they pay 20K, 30K, something like that. Recently they had the Craig Jones Invitational that was 1 million. All of a sudden it doesn't sound like really that much. So yeah, I mean, if you've got real offers for 500,000, 1 million, or whatever in Japan, then I get it. Especially when the reason you can get those offers is your name and you risk it for this little bit of. So I get it. That's fine. So as the fans, we want something, but like it may not make much sense to him. Um,
Yeah, no, 100%. And like you said, CGI kind of really scaled it up fast with going straight from 20 grand to 1 million.
They
Whether
went a
that's
little bit
sustainable or
bigger in
not.
betweens. Their EBI is paid a little bit more than that. It's been possible to win like 50K there. There's been other little shows that, but like, yeah, it was big time scale up fast. If I'm not mistaken, they gave away two $1 million prizes in one night, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And they had like the floor pricing was the same as first prizes at UFC. Like if you lost, you got like 20 grand or something like that.
Right.
I don't think that number is exact, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. And that's how they were trying to poach all the talent. It's like, well, even if I lose over here, it's like first prize at ADCC. So I guess we could pass
Multiple
on
guys.
ADCC. What?
Yeah, yeah, no, multiple guys left because of that very reason. They're like, even if I lose first round, I'm going to get paid more than medaling in ADCC. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Unless you want the illustriousness of that title. And ADCC has such a rich heritage, like I was talking with the Machados one time, and they're telling me that what back when they fought ADCC, it was almost like a blood sport in a sense where you had the drums and you had all these different martial artists in one place, and you had the sheiks, and then before the tournament when they flew into Dubai or whatever, and they took them right to a jewelry store, and they said you guys can have anything you want. So they all just loaded up their bags with gold and diamonds and all this stuff. So I imagine that was probably pretty close to 20 grand, all said and done. But I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the mystique. The story that ADCC hasn't told yet is that side of it, right? We're just skipping right ahead to what it is now, which is amazing. But I would like to see that some kind of build up to where they had some of that kind of pre-stories.
Yeah. ADCC has a rich heritage, but the thing about maybe not immediately, but the thing about money and prestige in grappling is they're always connected. So it's like, oh, I want the prestige, not the money. Yeah, but that $1 million tournament's going to have the prestige. Um, so it's going to follow because the money will draw the best guys. The best guys will bring the prestige. Because at a certain point at people's career, among black belts, at least that I'm around, people talk less about this title or that title and more about he beat this guy or that guy. So if you won IBJJF Worlds, the Mondials, but it was like a weird weight class. You did 125 and it was a weird, and you won your adult. Props to you for winning adult. But like, if you didn't face any big names, people forget you very fast. And you
True.
face somebody good to win, right? Somebody, but there's levels of good. And without the names is where it comes from. You beat several high name guys. That's what gives it the prestige, and they'll be there at that $1 million tournament. Um,
It really does. And that's where the little guys kind of struggle to make their names, guys like Mikey, guys like Bruno Malfacine,
mhm.
they were just killing it in their divisions, but it was the very reason where people were just like, well, but who'd they beat? And not to mention the other side of it is like, I beat plenty of good guys that are killing it now. And no one remembers it.
Yeah, they're killing
Either
it
the
now, but they
guys
weren't
aren't
killing
around.
it then.
Right. They were killing it back then. And it's like, so people remember him back then, right? And now they don't know him now.
Yeah.
Or the match is just lost. And like, I mean, there's plenty of guys that beat the Rutolos that we don't know about. There's plenty of guys that beat, I mean, pick them, Gordon and all these guys that aren't around anymore. So it's really the longevity too, is like how long can you stay in the sport, at the high level and what are those guys in your division going to be doing down the road to keep it? But um, if you beat a guy like Gordon, you're immediately going to be, you know,
Yeah. If you beat
yeah,
Gordon now, if you beat Gordon before all this, maybe not. You beat Gordon right now, immediately everybody will know who you are. Yeah,
right.
for sure. Agree, for sure. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about because you have a really big kids program, and for your kids, you're teaching all jiu-jitsu, right? Is it all jiu-jitsu or is it a hybrid? All jiu-jitsu?
All,
Okay. Even at a young age group. So you start at what age? Like two, or what age do you
yeah.
start?
So we start them at 2.5.
Okay,
We
at two
start
and
them at 2.5. Yeah. So I have two schools right now, one in Washougal, Washington, and then the other one's in Rainier, Oregon. And that Lone Wolf Jiu-Jitsu is my main school, and then Mather Martial Arts Academy is my sister school. And both of the schools have a heavy focus on the kids program. Um, kids programs, when I came and I opened up my gym 8 years ago, I noticed that there wasn't very many schools that had a good kids program. And I started teaching kids way back in the Machados when I was 16 in a blue belt. So I had a lot of years teaching kids, keeping them engaged, um, handling different things that come up, like when a kid gets hurt, how do you talk to them? When a parent has an issue, what do you do? The big one is controlling the room and making sure that everybody follows you and it doesn't become just a big playground. So my structure in my schools, it's very traditional in a sense where we have 17 rules on the wall. All the kids need to memorize the rules. We have a school creed that we say after every class, which touches on things like respect, respecting your parents, protecting your family and your freedom. um, that's the school creed. Then we also have the Warriors Code as well. So I started doing this, and over an 8 year period, we just evolved and evolved and evolved. So when I started it, I kind of started it what you would see as maybe a person who is good with kids, but still not the best kids class. Like there'd still be kids like running off the mat, going to parents, or like running in the bathroom up with their shoes off, or yelling or playing or whatever it may be, and distracting the other kids. And so that's kind of where we started. And then the evolution has been just getting better with our procedures, our standard operating procedures with the kids, our coaches, and everything, and really putting in those groundworks to the point where 3 years ago I was started seeing like 3 year olds and 4 year olds that would be in my PV class, and their little brother would want to join, and then I'd say, he's only 2.5, but let's try it. And then with the system, the 2.5 year old would just do awesome. He'd be listening and he wouldn't be playing. Because he already watched, and he just couldn't wait to get out there, but he knew exactly what was expected of him. So at that point, I had that one kid, it was 2.5, and then I decided to open up a new class, which is the tiny class. So now my class schedule is tinies, ages 2 to 4, Peewees 4 to 7, kids 7 to 13, and then the 13-year-olds also have a teen class, because there's some 13-year-olds that are better with kid in the kids class, and some that are better than the adults class. Um, so that's kind of like in a nutshell what I do. Teaching 2.5 year olds is like herding cats. But
What's the
kids want.
curriculum like in that class?
Mm,
Walk us through an example class. Or tell me about the curriculum or both.
yeah. So an example class for our tinies it looks something like, we're going to bow in. We're going to do a couple laps of running. We're going to focus on the warm ups. And a normal jiu-jitsu warm ups is going to be most of the class. So we're going to be doing shoulder rolls, back rolls, break falls. We're going to be doing one technique, like a single leg takedown, or just basic positioning. Here's what side control is. Try to hold the partner down. And then we're going to play little games. So we'll say one kid's in mount, the other kid's on bottom. The kid on bottom, your only goal is to just get up and get him off you. Kid on top, we're just trying to put him in, stay on top. And then we'll play a game for the rest of the class. That's a 45-minute class. I've done it for an hour, but then I cut it down to 45 minutes.
What type of game? Give me an example of the game at the end.
So that's kind of the magic, right? The games is the magic, because the games is what keeps the little ones there. So um, we have different games. So the one game is just jump over a rope, and it's just don't get hit by the snake. And if you get hit by the snake, then you get 2 push-ups. So you're just kind of taking a jump rope and you're swinging around on the floor, and then they jump over it. That's the most basic game that I did for years. We do capture the flag, so they'll both have their belts behind their gi, and they'll both try to get the flag. If they get the flag, they get 1 point, and then we have a clone point as the point. Um, Snake in the grass, the kids are in the middle, the other kids are on the end of the mat, and they're trying to get to the snakes. If the snakes get them, then they become the snake. Um, Dodgeball, which with 2 year olds just becomes throwing the ball at whatever they see. Um, and then we mix it up too. We mix it up. And we actually have a whole curriculum just on games, because that was my coach. Well, now he's a professor. So the guy who's under me, he was the one who started getting really creative with the games, because he realized that we can't just do a normal kids class with the peewees, with the tinies. We really have to sprinkle these games and so that's pretty much the games we do.
So we also do that age group, interestingly enough. Most BJJ
Oh,
schools will not, but we do a buddies program. So kind of like mommy and me, daddy and me, and we have a parent in there with them at that age group until 4. Um, I would I would love, and I think the parents would love to do without it, but like I had uh we've had issues with like you're talking about. It's just like, okay, you're trying to do these things, but even your high energy and never stop and not even expect them to listen much. People are hiding behind stuff and trying. I'm like, wait, I used to have 8, now I have 7.
How many
So
how many kids do you have in there? 7?
yeah, so um that would be a big class at that age group. So 4 to 7 or so. Um,
Yeah. So you have 4 to 7 2.5 year olds,
2 to 4 year olds.
2 to 4 year olds,
And
and
all of
there's
them, I have them in there with their parent, each one of them. So they all have a parent in there with them, and then I probably have 4 coaches on the mat too.
with
So
with seven kids.
yes, so not
Okay.
real like that's a real close
Yeah.
instructor student ratio, but at that age group, we're only doing it once a week.
Yeah. So I do my class twice a week. And then I do my peewees every day. All my kids' class I do every day, but I do that age group um, twice a week. And so what happens, the reason I didn't have parents come on is because I'm very strict. We have to train the parents and the kids.
Hmm.
And my whole philosophy on kids martial arts is the number one thing that we're trying to do is foster the independence and foster them to be able to have confidence to do sports and to do things without mom or dad. Um, and so that's the name of my school is Lone Wolf Jiu-Jitsu. You want to be the lone wolf outside in the world with the way you approach things. You don't want to be kind of the follower. You want to kind of, you know, have the confidence to conquer anything you have yourself. You still have your team, but it's all that self-empowerment. And so when I train the parents, I don't let the parents do anything or say anything in my academy. Um, and so it's hard when it's a 2 year old,
Hmm.
but what I do is I try to train them over time to rely on the instructor. So we only have one instructor for those 7 kids. Now, will the kids run off the mat? Yes, they will. Um, then we just have the structure to say, hey, like, because we have to continue with the class, and we don't have enough instructors to go wrangle the kid. So we might lose more kids because of that, and we might tell the parent, hey, maybe it's best that you wait another year until he goes to Pee-wee's. So I think your way is good in a sense because you can probably keep more people where I'm actually just kind of weeding out to see who are the most advanced cognitively, kids, and then I keep them. But the beautiful thing about that is almost like clockwork. Those tinies immediately go into peewees, and they're some of the most well-behaved peewees we have, almost leaders in the peewees. Then they go to kids, and then they become leaders. So we just funnel them through our program, and I don't focus on quantity. I focus on quality. you know and I've had this program now for 2 years plus, so we've had some time to kind of funnel through the kids that weren't in it. um, but that's just my thought on it, because I'm so strict in my classes with, like, parents aren't allowed to coach, parents aren't allowed to really do anything. They're just kind of supposed to be seen and not heard, like my other coach tells me, which is you're telling your customers that, but I mean, that's why you bring them to us.
Yeah.
Now, I did try a baby class, and the baby class that was 1 year olds to 2 year olds. And so the baby class, we had to have the parents on the mat. And that didn't last for more than a week or two, where I had to get rid of that.
Yeah, it's so that's so hard. I mean, they do. I guess they do mommy and me yoga at that time, but I guess mainly they're also mommy's just playing with a dog, more or less, also. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I would, I'm a huge fan of, yeah, if the kids could do more without relying on their parents. It's just, I also, like, personally, I came from jiu-jitsu. When I was in school, I was diagnosed with a motor skill disability. I had an
Oh,
occupational therapist, all that stuff. And like, I could never make any sports team. Like, so jiu-jitsu is the first thing that I could, like, because there's no making the team. You can go do jiu-jitsu. And I ended up competing. I competed over 100 times in jiu-jitsu, and you won't find my name at ADTC, but, but you know, I've beaten black belts and like I've been a real competitor, and I feel like I'm not an asterisk black belt. I'm a black belt, right? So, and I say all that to say I don't really want to filter for the great kids because those kids don't need me. So there's going to be certain kids, they just gravitate towards everything. They go play softball, they're great at softball. They go play baseball, they can play baseball, basketball, football. They're great at everything. And then there's the other ones that I'm their last chance. And I don't really want a program that filters them out. But I do like what you're saying. I wish I could do both. But that's part of my on everything. Even my adult programs, everything I don't try to make the gym cheesy or anything like that. But at the same time, I talk about different things we do for retention and whatever with other school owners. It's like, oh, bro, I didn't need that. Like, yeah, but
yeah.
how many of us are left? So I
Yeah.
don't want just the like I'm trying to. Everybody says, "Oh, jujitsu for everybody," and then they turn it up to 105 degrees in there, and they roll 100%. Like, yeah, but is it really for everybody at your gym?
No, 100%. And I want to clarify too, Brian, is I only do that with my tinies, with my 2-year-old class. All my other programs, my policy is um, I'm not going to give up on you. If you give up, if your parent, if you have some issues that whether it's mentally or physically, and you give up, or your parents give up, then that's a talk that we have. But I will never give up on a kid. And that's a great point too. Kind of your story is such an inspiration for your students because it just shows that jujitsu is kind of the thing that most of us, like myself, we're drawn to it because we either weren't good at other sports or the outside world didn't really accept us for whatever reason. And we went to a jujitsu academy and there was a brotherhood and they took us in. And just for whatever reason, we were drawn to it and it just changed our life, as cliche as that sounds. Um, so I have most of my time is taken up with the kids that are kind of too hard, not too hard, but they have a harder time in a group environment. So I'll take them and I'll do privates with them, and then I integrate them back in the academy. So that's kind of my job. So I have privates throughout the day, and then I'm working with kids that have a hard time
What is that
to get into the
process
class.
like? Right. So from how you would approach the parent that they need privates to what is the cost to like what is that process like? Because I've heard of people doing that, but but honestly, most people are doing it are just trying to not do what you're doing. They're trying to like, well, this person can't make it in the class, so I'll do some privates and get what money I can from them before they leave. Honestly, they wouldn't word it that way, but that's kind of what some people are doing. So tell me about your
Yeah.
process with that.
So so it's an interesting process, the way we do it. I think it's so there's kind of a lot to that. The my number one thing that I try to do is when I'm selling a membership or I'm talking to a parent is I'm kind of almost ignoring most of the things that some parent might tell me about their child as far as like what they can and can't do. And I'm trying to just say, hey, let's get them in a trial class. I'll put them with one of my leader kids in the academy. I'll have a coach there with them. and let's just try to have him in a normal class and let's just treat him like there's nothing wrong. That usually works. So I have tons of my kids have had, they have autism and all these things, anxiety and all these things, and you'd never know it because they came into me, they told me this laundry list of things. And in the beginning, I'd be like, oh, well, let's make sure that we like do this or do that. And then I just started being like, you know what? Jiu-jitsu has such a way of, of overcoming so many things. And I've seen so many success stories. I was like, maybe you're right, parent. Maybe they do have X, Y, and Z, but when they're on the mat, no one can tell. So that's most of the time what I do 90% of the time. Now, if there's a situation where the student goes in, right? Because I always have them do the same process. They always go through the trial class with one kid who's a leader, who's been with me for 8 years, who knows how to be kind and really gentle with the kids and not be like super judgmental, because I mean, we have kids that I've had multiple kids that they started to, and they're just hitting themselves, or they're hitting or they're biting or they're doing all these things to other kids. And so these leaders are trained really sometimes better than adults on interacting with other kids, being very gentle. Hey, good job. Whatever they're saying, they're always encouraging. Now you have a situation where this student, you can see in one or two classes, is actually going to be, it's actually going to be harder for them to follow along. So like maybe they'll come up to you and they'll be like, hey, what did you say? What did you teach? And then you're just like, well, you were sitting right in front. Didn't you see it right in your head? And then they'll be like, well, I just don't remember it, right? And I just can't. So that becomes more of an issue where because now that student is going to make it harder to drill with another student. So both students are going to suffer because all the time is spent on repeating that technique. And then the coaches have to go back and reteach. Um, so in that situation, then we would kind of see how it plays out. And then if not, I'd have a meeting with the parents and then I propose, doing a private personal lessons or semi-personal lessons with the student with the goal being to reintegrate back into the program. That's always the goal. It's never the goal to keep somebody a private because then they get very because privates are awesome. I mean, you go at your own time. Parents can schedule it. It's really, really good. And so the kids get comfortable with it. They're like, well, this is awesome. And it's like, well, the goal is for you to be able to defend yourself against other people. So you have to go against other kids. The question you had about the pricing structure on that, I mean, it's just all around the place, brother. Like, if someone comes to me and wants a private lesson from me, you're probably going to pay like $250 an hour. Just a normal person. When I
Mhm.
say normal, just a guy who wants to, just a white belt who just wants to train with me, it's going to be $250 an hour. Why is that? Because I'm doing all these other privates for $50 an hour, $25 an hour for kids that really need it. And that's where my heart is. And that's what I want to spend my time on. So people ask me all the time, can you do privates? And I'm like, I don't really do privates. But that's not true. I do privates. I do privates for the kids that have to get back in the program. And because I've seen, and I don't want to make it seem like, that's so amazing, blah, blah, blah. But and I know you've seen it too. Once you see the transformation, you start to really believe in this stuff and you really start to think, man, this is so important. So I just work with the parents. Sometimes they don't even pay a private lesson fee. Sometimes they'll just pay the regular monthly fee, and I'll try to schedule some time with them. And um, at one time I was doing 5 or 6 kids a day like that separately, and now I just have like maybe one kid that I'm working with. Um, so if that answers your question.
Actually, even even from a business standpoint, I really like it. And so we've done the similar thing of like kind of giving them way to get people back in and things like that. And so I feel the same way about transforming lives and things like that. But we also have I have an obligation, I feel like, to like help schools survive, right? So I'm like, okay, so you also have to survive or you can't help anybody. So my business justification is this. So we can get $200 or 250 one or two times. Very few people can maintain that on a regular basis. So you and I probably have at some point paid somebody that much or more for a private lesson. But that was alongside other training, and we put that money together for a once or twice thing, not for a regular basis. Um, so most black belts that I speak to have bought an expensive private lesson before. And so that's cool and all. But what's worth more than so I've done so especially in a certain age of 10th planet, I did a lot of private lessons and I'd have people that didn't train with me. They were like from I'm in Beaumont, I'm an hour and a half from Houston, or driving through or whatever, want to catch a private lesson with the 10th planet guy and stuff like that. And it's like, how much is that really going to help that person? And it's not building the school that much and whatever. But I will say, from a business perspective, if you can save a customer, if you have to understand what a lifetime value of a customer is, if you do it for free, you're making more than $250. Even if your tuition is way too cheap, right? So even if you're back in the dark ages, which $100 a month is like $200 is the new 100. When everything else, that's when gas was $1.25, right? So, but yeah, even if you're back then, like that's you'll get that by getting them to train with you 2 more months. But like most people are charging way more than that, and you can now keep this person for 8 more months, a year, 2 more years. And you can start to measure, like if you want, not just guess, hey, what on average, how much longer do these people stay? And when I started giving away private lessons for MIAs like track, hey, you haven't been there. Hey, let's get you back in, get you a private lesson, and like see the success rate on getting them back in, and at least measure they'll stay back in for 2 more months. It's like, okay, if they stay back in for 2 more months, that's way more than a private lesson. So um, I agree with you also from a business standpoint. And why I wanted to ask, especially if you don't have to do it for a very long time. If you're doing $25 an hour and you're stuck doing that 3 times a week for 5 years, I mean, maybe that doesn't pan out. But yeah, if you can get them reintegrated in a reasonable basis, I think it makes business sense too.
It really does. And, I don't have the numbers on this, but I could tell you that the kids that I've done that for, they've stayed with me for years and years and years. They
Hmm.
become my leaders, they become my assistant coaches. It's more than paid for it. I see it as what I call jujitsu karma, but it's the same thing that you said on the business side. Like if you really help these people, then you will get it back and they will be with you and they will refer you every chance they have, you know. And that's only if you have a parent that's on board. If
Hmm.
the parent's not on board, then you might as well just forget about it because I've had people that I've done that for where the parent wasn't on board and I thought and I knew in my heart this was the right thing. But the parent didn't see the value of jujitsu and it didn't make sense. So it's just case by case basis, but I would definitely encourage, instructors to like overlook some of the dollar amounts in the near term to make it in the long term, like you said.
Yeah. So there is a quote that it costs a lot more money, and I could say also it costs a lot less time to retain a student than it does to acquire a new one. So if you look at the modern age of ad costs going up and all that, like if we can just um, save a student, right? And so even if it right now you do it personally, but if you can, if you can't, if you can pay somebody else to do it um, that's going to do a good job and is on board with the vision. I can see that too. Um, so, I've paid for coaches' times to do free private lessons quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
And when you're in, and the thing is too, is I always look at it when I talk to school owners, um, I look at it where they're at, because there's a lot of people that are starting their school now that they don't have the ability to really do as much of this stuff that me and you are doing with where they're at. They're just thinking about how am I going to pay my bill next month, and they're not thinking exactly about how can I change the greater community. um, but I think that they can still do it at a small level, even when you're beginning. And I think that you're still going to create a true business that has a great reputation if you do stuff like that.
If you're doing it the right way, people think about, oh, McDojo and like that. If you're making a lot of money, you're not doing a good service. If you're doing a good service for a community, you don't make a lot of money. But I say the opposite. I think if you're doing it the right way, the more you're helping the community and the better service you're providing, the more money you're going to make. Um,
Yes.
that the age of the giant McDojo school being the highest earning school in town. I just don't see it anymore. And I have the special perspective of owning a software company, and right now I'm running ads for it. I didn't for a long time, and I'm talking to people on the phone all the time. And all these people that's like, oh, the Taekwondo school is killing it. And you know what Taekwondo schools tell me all the time? It's like, man, BJJ has come in and they've destroyed us. And they're complaining about now. Of course, you'll talk to a really good person with really good business systems, but most people there's just complaining on all sides, right? So most of these guys that are in it for the money aren't making any money. Um,
Yes.
the
100%.
the guys that
Yeah.
are passionate about stuff, no matter their art and whatever, they can, even if it isn't BJJ, they usually passion is contagious and they can build something. They usually make I'm hugely pro BJJ, but like they can still make a positive impact in their own way generally. But yeah, so it's I do I hear both sides complaining now, right? So the BJJ guys I talk to on the phone, it's like, man, I can't grow a kids program. I can't like because Taekwondo parents want they want to moms want to put their kid in karate and what, and then I go talk to the Taekwondo school. It's like, man, BJJ is killing this. It's like, bro, I just talked to your neighbor. Like both of you guys are complaining about each
Right.
other, but really
Right.
none of you guys have business systems.
None
Um,
of you guys have business systems, and if you refer to what Bruce Lee said, in terms of take what is it, take what's useful. Um, what I think the quote.
discard what isn't something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Take what you can, discard what isn't useful, and then add what's uniquely your own. So that's my model. Is I drew from my original traditional martial arts background, because he had a huge kids program, and then I kept those systems, and then I saw a big deficiency in what BJJ schools are doing with their kids program, which a lot of them they just teach it like an adults program. And so I mixed the two, and then we kind of have a lot more success with that. um the taekwondo schools suffer because BJJ is so popular. People know that BJJ is the most effective martial art. It's You just hear jiu-jitsu all the time now. But another thing, the taekwondo model, they got popular on the $19.99 in a free uniform ad. But then they would get you on a high membership. Um, but I think there's a happy medium if people want to grow their kids program. They should really look at, number one, it all comes down to why customers coming in. Why? And it's like you have a brown belt sometimes, and you let the brown belt teach for you, and he starts teaching all this random stuff because he wants to look cool. And it's like, no, why are these people here? Well, at the end of the day, it's for a variety of reasons. It's So everything that I do or teach my guys, it's about the why. And if we get back to kids, it's about, I want my kid to be confident. I want my kid to be you know more self-disciplined. I want them to be, all these different things, have more fitness. A lot of it now with the kids is the kids are so addicted to screens and video games and they have what I call TikTok mind. So TikTok mind is where like you look at one thing and then you lose concentration and then you go to the next one, next one, next one. It's like, oh, I want to play baseball, and then oh, I don't like baseball, I'm gonna quit. And then I want to do this and I'll quit. Oh, this is boring. Oh, this everything's boring. Well, so what we did is we gamified our jujitsu. So we use more of an ecological approach. Okay, guys, here's your goal. This is the game. This is called the passing the guard game. This is called the takedown game. Here's how you pass the next level. See? So that's how I teach. And so I teach it in a way that that I can draw them in from what they're already doing. And, and then I can keep them engaged because I know that if I keep them long enough, jujitsu itself will be the reason why they go there. But until then, it has to be fun. It has to be, things like that. But at the same time, you also have to have discipline. And that's where the instructors have it hard too. How are you going to be disciplined and make it fun? So it's it's kind of all those things that we try to do in my school. And I think there's a few schools that do it pretty good. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the things that I think about. Parents are coming here for a specific reason, and it's not to have their kids learn a berimbolo on day one.
Yeah.
It's not to talk about, here's what I learned from Jacare. The kids don't know who Jacare is. And I tell some of the coaches, I'm like, guys, nobody knows who they are. Just tell them why they're doing it. You know, let's say it's a double leg takedown. Well, it's like, look, if someone comes at you at school and tries to punch you in the face and take your money, as soon as you see that hand move, you're gonna go under and double leg them. That's why. But you can't do that with your friends. You can't do that with your cousins. So there's this whole story we tell. But I think it starts to make sense, and the parents, they start to like it, and kids want the discipline. Kids really want, they crave to really, have a coach that can command them, and that can, they can kind of do that thing. Because the parents, like, I'm sure you hear this all the time, where the parents will be like, well, my kid listens to you better than he listens to me,
Yeah.
right? So we're your partner in this. The martial arts coaches, we are here to do the disciplining and to do the things that sometimes the kids won't listen to you at home. They're going to listen to you, and if they mess up at home, make sure you tell coach, because we will take away their belt. And the kids do not want to get their belt taken away. That's another system that I have.
So when you earlier said this is this game and this is how you pass to the next level, what do you mean by pass to the next level? Is they do games in order? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Definitely, because I jump around a lot. So the first thing that I'll do when I teach a class, I'm teaching a technique. The technique is, there's a sequence, right? So it's going to be, let's say the technique is double leg. As soon as you double leg the person, your training partner, they pull you in guard. As soon as they pull you in guard, you pass the guard, and then you get them in a Americana. Let's say that's the move for the next couple weeks. So level one is you have to pass the double leg takedown. Passing the double leg takedown for the whole class needs to get a pass for us to move to level two. Meaning each partner needs to be fully engaged and pass that move without playing around, without talking. We have to do it 5 times each. Perfect technique. So then we have an instructor come by, and the instructor will look and say, okay, Johnny, you do it. Okay, Sally, you do it. Okay, you two got to pass. And then we'll make them hold the push-up position so we know they're done. And then we'll go to the next group, the next group, the next group. After the whole class passes, they line it up, they get in the ready stance. We use the traditional ready stance where you have your fists out. And so they're lined up in a ready stance, and we say, all right, guys, congratulations, you guys passed level one. Now, as a team, we're going to move on to level two. And then we do level two, and then the level two is the guard pass. Okay, guys, you passed it. Now level three. Level three is the Americana. Great. Line it up. Congratulations, guys. You guys all passed the levels today. Now you guys have earned the game of the day. Today we're doing dodgeball. The kids scream. So that's how our classes go.
Okay, so each day it resets to the levels are for is there always three levels?
No, it's so it just depends on the technique and it depends on the class. Sometimes there's three. I'd say three is usually what it is. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it depends on the technique. It depends on the technique. The whole idea is not necessarily the levels in the curriculum, it's gamifying it like a level in a video game.
Yes.
That's what I want to do.
Even from a software point of view, even from what we're working on, attendance check-ins and things like that, like everything is gamification works on adults too, right? And so it's really, if you want to think about it, some people hurt their feelings, but the entire belt system is gamification. Um,
Yeah.
it's also a certification process and it's a couple other things, but it's gamification. Um, Jigaro Kano came up with it off of looking at some swim teams in the 1800s. There was white and black belts, but the color belt system, if I'm not mistaken, that's where the founder of judo came up with it. So it's fairly late in the martial arts world that they had those, and it's part of his plan to basically, I don't know if this word was a gamification was around then, but it was a retention and tracking trick, right? So yes, we want to do that because it keeps people engaged, it makes it fun, and we're not at war teaching combatives. So it's supposed to be fun. People want something fun to do. And yes, there's practical and it can change your life and all this stuff. But when I have a unique answer to the question, people are like, "Hey, what martial art should I do? Well, what martial art is best for self-defense?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm a huge fan of jiu-jitsu. And here's why. However, here's really what the best martial arts for you for self-defense is. One that you enjoy and you're actually going to train. Because if you do not train any martial art on a regular basis, you will not be able to use it. So, oh, jiu-jitsu is great and you do it one time and you never come back. You're not going to be able to use it in a fight, bro.
Right.
So, uh, so you're better off but if you would have trained Muay Thai, I think jiu-jitsu is a better martial art for many people. But Muay Thai you'll stay in, well, that's better for you then, bro. That'll be better. You got a better chance of defending yourself because you can actually do it. So we can make our classes where people actually do them. People think it's cheesy and whatever, but like that's part of the magic. And we're trying to that's how you get the bigger base of the pyramid. Even if you care about these competitors at the top, you get the better piece at the top by building a bigger base. So keep everybody
Yes.
in as many as you can. So yeah,
As
huge
many as
fan.
you can. As many as you can, and that's always been my struggle throughout the years. It's coaching the competitors, but focusing on the greater academy because the greater academy is the 90%, the competitors are the 10%. Our school has slowly shifted over to more competitors. I'm still competitive. My coaches are, so there's a lot of, kind of like people that look up to that still compete but no, you're totally right. It's like whatever martial art you can stay in is the martial art that you need to do. And when people message me and say, I'm interested in the self-defense class, that's where I come in and I start educating them on what self-defense is. Because it's not so much anymore, but it used to be, a self-defense. We have a self-defense workshop this month, and you're going to pay $20 and you're going to learn self-defense. Guess what? Never works. The ones that even my girl, I did an Instagram video of my girl who's been practicing cardio kickboxing with me for 4 years. This mom, she got punched in the face at work by a guy, a patron, and then he came at her with multiple punches, and she just unloaded on him with round kick to the head and just clobbered this Thai, and it was awesome. And she does cardio kickboxing. Why is that? It's for the very thing that you said. It's the repetition. It's the every day that you're in there hitting that bag, learning these combos. Doesn't matter what the label is, it's martial arts and it's training martial arts.
Cardio kickboxing is so the disadvantage or fitness kickboxing or whatever you want to call it. The disadvantage is yes, you don't learn as much as the defense and it worked out that time, but like it doesn't teach you to deal with like somebody coming at you, right? So people might freeze up and stuff like that. However, yeah, I would go ahead and go out on a limb and say it's about equivalent to most traditional martial arts in your probability of being able to use it in a fight. In that, if it's being taught at a good place, in that the punches and kicks are real. You're learning to generate power. You're generating you're making the muscle memory. And you could actually use that in a fight. Now, that said, I do think if your number one concern is self-defense, that's probably not the program for you. Um, but it's also an excellent intro program for a lot of a certain type of people that are just too terrified to enter a partner program. And then when they come in the class and it's not what is in their nightmares, they can move into Muay Thai and then they can move into Jiu-Jitsu and whatever. Like, because people think it's going to be like never back down or something. Like they think it's not for them that like, oh, I can hit this bag, but like in this Muay Thai class that is, and maybe there's classes like that that exist. In fact, I know there are that's going to knock you out their first day. Those do exist, but that's not most credible schools. Um, like, because that doesn't help you and like, that's dumb. I'm not going to do that to you. But people are worried about it. So anything to keep them at ease. And sometimes, we have great members that came through fitness kickboxing. I have a Muay Thai coach that he joined like 9 years ago. He joined fitness kickboxing with his girlfriend and moved into Muay Thai later. So
Yep. Yep. And then that's when you start to have the real integration. So, like when I started teaching it, when I started my school, I taught all the classes. I taught we called it women's fitness kickboxing. And it was very like just combos in the air. And then when we had our Muay Thai coach, I had all my cardio kickboxing coaches trained under him. So it became more of a, actual martial arts class where they hold mitts and because holding mitts gives you the reaction of knowing when a punch is. Now, it's like you talked about freezing, flight or flight. That's a whole other thing when you're talking about martial arts. I mean, it happens with some people that are jiu-jitsu black belts, it happens with a lot of people, and so I always tell people, it's all good and this is all fun, this is all good, but it's all pie in the sky thinking, what am I going to do when something happens to me? The best thing to do is like what Hicks and Gracie said, the best technique is a handshake and say, brother, I'm sorry.
yeah.
If it's just two guys at a bar, you know. Now it's different if it's someone running at you at a gas station. Now you got to throw that front kick and you got to go.
Oh no, 100% that basically any fight that is like mutual combat that you could get out of with your words, you should, because there's a couple different ways to lose that fight. You can lose the fight the way you think you can lose the fight. You can lose the fight due to pure randomness, something happens. And then you can lose the fight the way nobody thinks about. You can punch this guy in the face and he falls down and he hits his head and he dies and you can go to prison. And I'm going to say, go ahead and say you lost. Um,
Yes.
you're not going to
Yes.
feel like a winner, right? Maybe you didn't lose as bad as him, but you lost bad. Your life is ruined. And that's really happened to people. Um, yeah, I mean, and because the guy runs at you at your gas station, something happens and he gets hurt real bad or dies. You have better claim to self-defense than if things got heated in a bar. Your self-defense claim may be very weak there. If something really
100%.
bad happens. So there's a lot of reasons to to de-escalate. So yeah.
100% de-escalation. And the whole goal of what we do is to become defenders and not attackers. If you still lack the emotional intelligence to where you're getting offended at a bar, or you're even putting yourself in those situations, and you have skills, you're just asking for a problem. You're just asking for a problem. If you truly want to learn martial arts and become a martial artist, you're going to look for every way out of the situation. And you're also going to eventually, so my theory is everybody has a kind of a different way that they go into martial arts, but it's all kind of the same. So you start with one, and then you go into two, and then at the higher levels, you start going into three, four, five, and six, and that's weapons. And then when you are able to combine them all, you become a true martial artist. And so, but everybody, and that's not to say that the jiu-jitsu black belt that never does any of those is not going to be a true martial artist. But if you truly study martial arts, what I see is a lot of the true martial artists. Think about Bruce Lee, think about Chuck Norris, think about um, Anderson Silva. What did Anderson Silva do? He started with Muay Thai, then he became a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but then he practiced Kali, and he was practicing sticks and knives. So I think there's an evolution where you get so hungry for the knowledge, and then you start to see, and then you see parallels between all the martial arts, and then you're able to compare your different styles and combine them into martial arts. And then the highest level is never having to use it, but having all of these different tools in your toolbox.
Awesome. So, do you have any closing thoughts? I know you had some different things going on for yourself. You want to quickly talk about any closing thoughts, and then we'll go
Yeah.
over how people can find you and things
Yeah.
like
And I can talk for hours with you, Brian, here
that.
about
Hey, we can
martial
always
arts.
do another one later, but let's
Yeah,
wrap this
we could
one
do
up.
another one. So I know we have things to do. So a couple of different things. I'll just go quickly on them. Is we talk a little bit about like students that have certain issues, and it's hard for them sometimes to get into a group class, so we have to give them more time. So what I did is I started a nonprofit. It's called Thrive M3, thrivem3.org. And so my idea is basically being able to have accessible jujitsu and martial arts for your community, for people that really can't afford it, or for kids that are either the bullies or the bullied, and they all get to train jujitsu, and they also receive mentorship. And we do this off campus at my school. And so first I started it last year. We had 7 kids go through it for 6 months, and we had great results. Some of these kids didn't even want to go to school. They had such bad anxiety, but for whatever reason, they wanted to train. And so my goal is to spread this around Southwest Washington, where I live up here, and then start bringing the programs to the other states. So I'm just funding. I'm starting. It's all been self-funded up to this point, but now I'm starting to get funding. You can go to thrivem3.org to find out about it. I tried to connect with buddies over bullies, and it just didn't work out because they have a different business model. So I just decided to do my own thing, and I think I can really help a lot of different communities with this idea. And then Acacia accreditation is the other thing that I want to talk about. ACSIA accreditation, and that's a program that a guy named Randy Lavasser has started. That's where he does background checks for all of the coaches. He does a mat check to check the bacteria in your mats to make sure that there's not enough bacteria where staph and ringworm can grow. There's a feedback loop where people can give you their feedback. If there's any concerning things about instructors, you'll be the first to know as an academy owner. There's a kids corner where kids are actually taught how to notice if there's skin infections. Um, and then you get the ongoing support of having an ex-federal agent and one of the highest private investigation firms on your side. If God forbid you have an instructor that does something wrong, you have the support of for them to reach out to them at a pretty low monthly cost. So um, that's also one of my sponsors, and so that's something I'm really pushing to because we don't know how long we have left in this game, brother. So I'm just trying to just do what I can, and I'm just trying to do what I think's right, and hopefully some of this stuff sticks, and other academy owners will do it.
Awesome. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how should they do that?
You can always reach out to me on my Instagram. That's at D Stoner Jiu Jitsu. Don Stoner's the easiest name to remember. You can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. And I'm always looking to help out other school owners, and because I really think we have we have one of the most important jobs that we do.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Um, yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Brian.